The woman's voice trembled as she held a piece of torn bread in her hand. The bakery was warm, bright, full of fresh pastries, yet she stood there shivering, dressed in worn-out clothes, whispering words that made the entire shop fall silent. Do you have an expired cake for my daughter?" The little girl clung to her mother's torn sleeve, her eyes big and hungry, trying not to cry. And on the other side of the counter, a millionaire who had never known hunger in his life slowly lifted his gaze, and heard every single word. "If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in humanity, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. It truly motivates us to keep creating these stories." The rain had followed Elena Parker and her 6-year-old daughter, Lily, for weeks. Every shelter they found, every corner they tried to sleep in, every abandoned staircase they curled up under, everything seemed temporary, fragile, ready to fall apart like their life had. Elena had once worked in a small tailoring shop, stitching clothes and dreaming of a stable life for her daughter. But when the factory she worked for suddenly shut down without paying its workers, the chain reaction of unpaid bills, rising rent, and mounting debt pushed her and her daughter onto the streets. Still, Elena tried to keep a little hope alive. She tried to smile at her daughter even when her stomach twisted from hunger, even when her clothes felt cold and wet against her skin. That morning, Elena had taken a chance. She had walked into the bustling bakery on Maple Street, a place she had never dared to enter before. She had watched people walk out with warm croissants, soft muffins, and cakes decorated so beautifully they felt like artwork. Elena did not dare dream of buying any of them. She didn't even plan to ask for food. All she wanted was something, anything, that was old, unsellable, something that the bakery would throw away by closing time. Something to stop the gnawing hunger in her little girl's stomach for just one more day. Inside the bakery, everything seemed too bright, too warm, too perfect. The employees, Daniel and Mia, stood behind the glass counter smiling at customers. The golden pastries seemed to glow under the soft lights. And leaning casually against the counter was a man in an expensive suit, silver-haired, calm-eyed, with an air of quiet authority. No one knew he was one of the wealthiest men in the city, Richard Morgan, owner of several businesses, a man who had everything money could buy, except, perhaps, the ability to understand what it meant to be desperate. Elena's entrance was quiet, but her appearance was impossible to ignore. Her hair was unwashed, her shirt torn, her hands trembling as she held a small piece of dry bread she had found earlier. Lily held onto her mother's leg, wearing a dress that was once pink but had faded into a dull brown. For a moment, she simply stood there, hoping she wouldn't be asked to leave, and then came the sentence that silenced the entire bakery. "Do you have an expired cake for my daughter?" There was no anger in her voice, no entitlement, only fear. Fear that her child would go hungry again. Fear that they would be judged. Fear that someone might shout at them for even asking. Daniel and Mia exchanged a heartbreaking glance. They wanted to help, but their manager's strict rules often stopped them from giving away unsold items. And before they could say a word, the old millionaire slowly straightened his back and turned toward Elena. His eyes lingered on the little girl hiding behind her mother, her small face pale and tired. Something inside him twisted. An old, buried memory. Richard Morgan had once been a hungry child too. A lifetime ago, long before the suits and the wealth, he had stood in a bakery like this with his mother, wishing for a piece of bread they couldn't afford. And he remembered, very clearly, the shame of being turned away. As Elena panicked, thinking she had made a mistake by asking, Richard's gaze softened. But he didn't speak. Not yet. He wanted to see how the world would treat a woman who had nothing left but courage. For a painful moment, the entire bakery felt frozen. Customers stared. Some with sympathy. Some with discomfort. Some with judgment. Elena's heart thudded painfully. She knew she looked desperate. She knew people often avoided the homeless. She had prepared herself for rejection. But when Daniel took a step forward, something changed. His smile was soft and genuine, and he began packing pastries, fresh ones, not expired, into a paper box. Mia joined him, adding more items discreetly, as if afraid someone would stop her. Elena shook her head quickly, tears forming. "No, no, please," she whispered. "I didn't ask for fresh ones. My daughter, she's okay. Anything is fine. I don't want to be a burden." But the young employees continued packing the food. Before Elena could protest again, Richard stepped away from the counter. His voice was calm but powerful, echoing through the shop. He paid for everything Daniel and Mia had packed, then added more items: loaves, pastries, a whole cake, even some drinks for Lily. Elena's eyes widened in disbelief. She reached forward, touching the box with trembling fingers, terrified that someone would take it back. Richard studied her for a long moment. He saw exhaustion in her posture, hunger in her eyes. But beyond all that, he saw dignity. She had come here begging not for herself, but for her child. And not even for fresh food, just for something expired. He asked a few quiet questions, not out of curiosity, but out of concern. Elena hesitated, ashamed to reveal too much. But when she saw her daughter nibbling at a piece of bread with a look of pure relief, her voice cracked. She told him about the job loss, the debt, the eviction, the nights spent sleeping under rooftops, the days she skipped meals so Lily could eat. Richard listened without interruption. Each word felt like it reached a part of him he had long forgotten, the part that once knew hunger and uncertainty. He asked her why she hadn't reached out to any organizations or shelters. Elena lowered her eyes and admitted that she had, but the shelters were full, the waiting lists long, and most days they simply survived on hope. Richard felt something shift inside him. A man with billions in his bank account suddenly felt poor, poor in compassion, poor in awareness, poor in understanding how many people suffered silently around him. He offered help. Real help. A safe place to stay. A job. A chance to rebuild. At first, Elena refused. She didn't want to take advantage of anyone's generosity. Her pride was fragile, but still alive. But when Richard bent down and gently placed his hand on Lily's shoulder, promising her that he would make sure she never went hungry again, Elena broke. Not out of weakness, but out of relief. A relief she hadn't felt in years. Within days, Richard arranged a small apartment for them. He offered Elena a job in one of his textile stores, knowing her sewing skills would be valuable. He ensured Lily was enrolled in school. Slowly, painfully, beautifully, their life began to change. The bakery incident changed Richard too. He began a campaign to ensure all his businesses supported those in need: food drives, shelter funding, job programs, emergency aid. He told his staff that if anyone ever walked into any of his stores asking for help, they would never be turned away. Months later, Elena stood behind a clean counter in her new workplace, wearing a fresh uniform, hair brushed, eyes bright with confidence. Lily, now cheerful and healthy, would run into Richard's office every afternoon to show him her new drawings. And Richard, who once lived in a world of wealth alone, found a new purpose, a reminder that kindness can restore lives in ways money alone never could. As the seasons changed, so did their lives. What began with a question, a heartbreaking, humble question, became the beginning of a new chapter for three people who were meant to cross paths. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps spread messages of kindness and hope to the world. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in that bakery at that moment? And remember, sometimes, a single act of compassion can rewrite someone's entire story.